I still remember the night it happened, the night everything I believed about trust, friendship, and good neighbors fell apart. The sound of rain tapping on my window used to calm me, but that night it felt like a warning. A reminder that peace can vanish in seconds. It started with a phone call, one that changed everything. A police officer's voice came through the line, calm but cold. "Mr. Lane, we need to ask you some questions about your car." My heart skipped. I stared out the window where my silver sedan usually sat under the streetlight, except it wasn't there. I laughed nervously, thinking maybe my wife had taken it, but she was asleep in the next room. That was the moment I realized something was wrong. Very wrong. I ran outside barefoot, the rain soaking through my shirt. The driveway was empty, completely empty. For a second, I just stood there, letting the water run down my face, staring at the spot where my car should have been. The same car I'd saved for years to buy. The same car I'd proudly parked every night in the same place, right in front of my house. And now gone. I called the police immediately, reporting it stolen. They took the details, said they'd send a unit to check around. My wife stood by the doorway, clutching her robe, her face pale. "Who would steal your car, Ryan? This is a safe neighborhood." Safe, that word suddenly felt like a lie. The next morning, an officer came by, Officer Jenkins, a tall, quiet man with tired eyes. He took notes, looked at the empty driveway, and said something that confused me. "Your neighbor, Mr. Hill, already filed a report about your car." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "He said he saw it being taken last night, claimed it looked suspicious. He reported it before you even called." My neighbor, Daniel Hill. Daniel lived right next door, a middle-aged man, always friendly, always smiling. We'd shared barbecues, borrowed tools, even helped each other shovel snow in the winter. I trusted him. So when the officer said his name, I didn't know how to react. "He saw it," I asked. "Did he describe who took it?" "Not clearly," Jenkins said. "He just said someone drove off around midnight." Something didn't sit right. If Daniel saw my car being stolen, why didn't he knock on my door? Why didn't he call me first? Still, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was just trying to help. Later that afternoon, I walked over to Daniel's house. He opened the door before I even knocked, as if he'd been waiting. "Ryan, oh man, I heard about the car, I'm so sorry." His voice was warm, but his eyes didn't match. They darted left and right, avoiding mine. "Yeah," I said slowly, "the officer told me you reported it." He nodded. "Yeah, I saw some guy drive off with it around midnight, thought I was doing the right thing." "Did you get a look at him?" "Not really, it was dark." I thanked him anyway, but something about his story didn't sit right. When I walked back home, I kept replaying it in my mind. If he saw it happening, why didn't I hear anything? Why didn't my dogs bark? And why did his porch light turn off right after midnight last night when it's usually always on? Days passed. No leads. No sightings. My car had vanished without a trace. Then out of nowhere, a week later, I got another call. "Mr. Lane, we found your car," Officer Jenkins said. My heart leapt. "Where?" A pause. "About 2 blocks from your house, in a private garage." My stomach tightened. "A garage whose?" He hesitated again. "Your neighbor." I didn't understand at first. "What?" "Your car was found inside Mr. Hill's garage." For a moment the world went silent. No sound, no air, just disbelief. The same man who smiled at me every morning, who said he wanted to help me, had my car in his garage. I drove straight to the scene with the officers. Daniel's driveway was filled with flashing blue and red lights. Half the neighborhood stood outside, whispering. And there it was, my car, parked neatly behind his half-open garage door. I wanted to rush forward, scream, demand answers, but the officers stopped me. Daniel stood outside, pale and shaking. "I didn't steal it," he kept shouting. "I was keeping it safe." Safe? My mind couldn't process what I was hearing. Officer Jenkins approached me quietly. "We're still figuring things out, but he claims he found it abandoned a few blocks away and brought it here." I stared at him in disbelief. "So he just took it into his garage without telling anyone?" "That's what he says." They towed the car away for evidence, and Daniel was taken to the station for questioning. When I got home that night, my wife asked if I believed him. I didn't answer because I didn't know. Something told me this was just the beginning. The next morning, I walked over to where the police had parked my car temporarily. They'd already dusted it for prints. But when I looked inside, I noticed something strange. The driver's seat was pushed far back, not how I leave it. There were mud stains on the floor that weren't mine. And a faint smell like gasoline mixed with something metallic. I opened the glove compartment. My insurance papers were gone, so was the spare key. That's when fear really set in. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, someone had gone through my car carefully. Someone who knew what they were looking for. I went to the station later that day to talk to Jenkins again. He told me Daniel's story hadn't changed. He insisted he saw my car parked by the corner, thought thieves might come back for it, and brought it home to protect it. But he couldn't explain why he didn't tell me, or why he didn't call the police again afterward. It just didn't make sense. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel's face, his fake concern, his darting eyes. So I decided to do something reckless. I checked the security footage from my door camera. It doesn't point directly at my driveway, but it captures part of the street. I scrolled through the timeline from that night. At 11:52 p.m. I saw headlights, my car's headlights turning on. But what caught my attention wasn't the car, it was the figure walking toward it. The shape was familiar. The way he moved, his height, the way he adjusted his jacket before getting in. It looked exactly like Daniel. My hands trembled as I paused the footage. Could it really be him? I took the clip to the police the next morning. Officer Jenkins watched it quietly, rewinding twice. Finally he sighed. It's not clear enough to confirm, but yes, it looks similar. They couldn't arrest him on that alone. He had an excuse ready, he'd claimed he found the car later, so maybe he'd moved it for safekeeping. I could tell Jenkins didn't buy it, but they needed more evidence. That evening, Daniel came over to my house. He stood on my porch, hands shaking, pretending to look remorseful. Ryan, man, this whole thing's a misunderstanding. The cops are twisting my words. I didn't invite him in. Why was my car in your garage? I asked quietly. He swallowed hard. Like I said, I found it, someone must have left it there, I didn't want it to get damaged. Then why didn't you tell me? I panicked. Okay, I thought you'd be mad. His voice cracked, but his eyes stayed cold. Something about his tone, it wasn't guilt, it was fear. After he left, I locked every door in my house. Something told me this wasn't over. 2 nights later, around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of movement outside. A faint scraping sound near my driveway. I peered through the blinds, and there he was, Daniel, standing near the spot where my car had been towed from. He was holding something, a flashlight and what looked like a small metal tool. I stepped outside quietly, recording on my phone. When he noticed me, he froze. Then, without saying a word, he bolted back to his house. I called the police again. They came, searched the area, but found nothing except faint tire tracks leading from his driveway to the corner of the street. The same corner where he claimed to have found my car. Something was going on, something deeper. The next day, Jenkins called me in again. Mr. Lane, we might have a bigger issue. During the investigation, we found out your car was involved in a hit-and-run 2 days before it was reported stolen. I blinked. What? That's impossible. I was home that night. I know, but your license plate was captured by a traffic camera downtown. He slid a photo across the table. My car, same plate, same color. And behind the wheel, though blurry, it looked just like Daniel. I felt my blood run cold. He didn't just steal my car. He used it. Jenkins leaned back. If that's true, he tried to frame you. Reporting your car as stolen might have been his way to cover his tracks before we found out. I couldn't breathe. Daniel wasn't just a liar, he was dangerous. Later that day, I walked past his house. His curtains were closed, his car gone. The neighborhood felt tense, like everyone knew something they weren't saying. That evening, as I sat by my window, I saw a small note slipped under my door. It was handwritten, no envelope. Stop digging or you'll regret it. My hands trembled as I held the paper. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. I knew exactly who it was from. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about a stolen car anymore. This was personal. Daniel had something to hide, something worth threatening me over. And I wasn't going to stop until I found out what it was. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. If the police couldn't catch him, I would. But I had no idea that my search for the truth would uncover something far darker than I ever imagined. Because behind that friendly smile, that quiet house next door, Daniel Hill wasn't who he said he was. And the car he borrowed from me was just the beginning of his secret life. When I snuck back to his property the next night, the garage door was slightly open. Inside, I could see shelves filled with boxes, tools, and something else, license plates. Dozens of them from different states, each with numbers scratched off or painted over. And in the corner, under a dusty tarp, something that made my blood freeze. It wasn't just my car he'd taken. There were pieces of other vehicles, doors, bumpers, engines, all carefully stacked. A full illegal chop shop, hidden behind a friendly neighbor's smile. I turned to leave, but then I heard it, footsteps. Slow, close. Ryan, a voice whispered from the dark, calm but chilling, "You shouldn't be here." My heart raced as I turned around and saw Daniel standing in the doorway, holding something metallic in his hand. And that's where everything changed. My throat went dry. Daniel's face was half-shadowed, and the streetlight leaking through the garage window caught the edge of the wrench in his hand. He wasn't smiling anymore. The warmth he used to fake so easily was gone, replaced by something cold, something that made my skin crawl. "Daniel, what is all this?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay calm. He tilted his head slightly, like he was studying me. "You shouldn't have come here, Ryan. You should have just let it go. Let it go. You stole my car. You lied to the police." He stepped closer, the wrench clinking softly against a toolbox. "I didn't steal anything," he said quietly. "I borrowed it for work." I took a slow step back. "Work? What kind of work involves hiding cars in your garage?" He chuckled under his breath, a low, unsettling sound. "You wouldn't understand. You live in this perfect little world thinking everyone's honest, everyone's clean. You don't know what real survival looks like." I glanced at the door behind him, calculating the distance. "I think you should explain it to the police," I said. "They'd love to hear about your version of survival." He sighed. "See, that's your problem. You always think calling the police solves everything." He set the wrench down slowly, and for a second I thought maybe he was calming down. Then his voice changed. "But when the police are part of it, who do you call then?" The words hit me like ice. "What are you talking about?" He smiled faintly. "You really think I did this alone, that I built all this without anyone noticing? Come on, Ryan, you're smarter than that." He took another step forward, and instinctively I backed into one of the metal shelves. A box rattled, spilling a few license plates to the floor. His eyes flicked to the noise just for a second, and I ran. I sprinted out of the garage, across the damp grass, and into my backyard. My lungs burned, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I didn't stop until I was inside, locking the door behind me. Through the window blinds, I could see Daniel standing at the edge of his yard, watching my house in silence. That night I barely slept. Every creak in the house made me jump. By morning, I went straight to the police station with everything I saw: the chop shop, the plates, the confrontation. Officer Jenkins listened, but his expression didn't change much. "Did you take any photos?" "No, I was too busy trying not to get killed." He nodded. "We'll check it out." But hours turned into a day and nothing happened. When I called to follow up, they said they didn't find anything unusual. I couldn't believe it. "You didn't find anything. There were license plates, car parts." "Maybe he cleaned it up," Jenkins said. "Maybe you misunderstood what you saw." His tone was off, tired but also hesitant. When I hung up, I realized something Daniel said might have been true. Maybe someone inside the department was helping him. Over the next week, Daniel acted like nothing had happened. He waved when he saw me outside, mowed his lawn, smiled at my wife when she brought groceries in. Like everything was normal. Except it was. I started noticing strange things: cars parked near my street late at night, men I didn't recognize standing across the road, pretending to talk on their phones. Once, when I was driving home, I caught sight of a black SUV in my mirror following me for 6 blocks before turning off suddenly. I felt trapped. If Daniel was working with someone, maybe even the police, then who could I trust? One night, I decided to collect my own proof. I waited until after midnight, when the neighborhood was quiet. Then I slipped out with my phone and crept toward Daniel's house again. The garage was closed this time, but a faint light glowed through the small window. I climbed up the side fence just enough to peek inside. What I saw made my blood turn cold. A different car was in there now, a black sedan, its plates already removed. And next to it, Daniel was talking to someone. A man in uniform. I squinted, trying to make out the face. It was Jenkins. For a moment I thought maybe I was wrong, maybe it was someone else, but when he turned, the badge on his shoulder caught the light. My stomach dropped. They shook hands, exchanged something small, maybe an envelope, and Jenkins left through the side gate. Daniel closed the garage door right after. I ran back home before they could see me. My mind was spinning. The one person I trusted to help me was helping him instead. The next morning, I got a text from an unknown number. "Stop watching, this isn't your fight." That was it. No name, no number traceable. But I knew it was them. For days, I lived in fear. Every knock at the door made my heart race. Every car that slowed down in front of my house made me think they were coming for me. My wife started noticing my paranoia. "Ryan, you're scaring me. Maybe it's all just a misunderstanding." I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't, not after what I saw. So I decided to record everything. I set up small cameras in the trees facing Daniel's property, one near the mailbox, one at the corner of my roof. If he was really running something illegal, I'd catch it. For a few nights, nothing happened. Then, around 3 a.m. on the fourth night, the motion alert went off on my phone. I opened the live feed and there he was. Daniel with 2 other men, loading large boxes into the black sedan. They worked fast, moving like people who'd done it many times before. When one of the men turned his face toward the camera, I caught it clearly. It wasn't Jenkins this time, but he was wearing the same style of badge. The next morning, I went straight to a local journalist I knew from work, someone who'd covered corruption stories before. Her name was Laura. She listened carefully as I explained everything, showing her the footage. She didn't say much at first, just nodded, then said quietly, "If what you're saying is true, this could be huge, but it's also dangerous. Are you sure you want to do this?" I hesitated, then I nodded. I can't let him get away with it. Laura agreed to help me, but she warned me not to confront Daniel again. We planned to collect a few more days of footage before publishing anything. That same night, I noticed my front door slightly open. I knew I'd locked it. My wife was asleep upstairs. I walked in slowly, listening. The air smelled faintly of gasoline, that same sharp metallic scent from my car. Then I saw it. On the living room table sat a single object. My spare car key. The one that had gone missing. I froze. He'd been inside my house. I called Laura immediately, whispering into the phone. She told me to leave the house right away, to go to a hotel for the night. We did. The next morning, we returned with local police from a different district. They searched my home, but there was no sign of forced entry, no fingerprints, nothing. It felt hopeless, like every step forward just pulled me deeper into something I couldn't escape. A few days later, Laura called me again. "I've been digging," she said. "Daniel Hill isn't his real name." My grip tightened on the phone. "What?" "He's using an alias. His real name is Daniel Horner. He was involved in a car smuggling ring 5 years ago in another state. Charges were dropped after key evidence disappeared." "Disappeared?" I asked quietly. "Yeah, police evidence, locker fire. Nobody was ever charged." I felt sick. Everything suddenly made sense, the plates, the parts, the connections, Jenkins' involvement. He'd moved here under a fake name to start over, and he'd almost gotten away with it. Laura said she'd already contacted a federal investigator she trusted. They were planning a sting, but I had to stay quiet, pretend like everything was normal until they moved in. That meant I had to keep living next to Daniel like nothing was wrong. For 2 weeks I smiled when he waved. I nodded when he joked about the weather. And every night I watched from my window as strange cars came and went from his driveway. The fear never left me, but neither did the determination. Then one evening, just when I thought we were getting close, everything went sideways. Laura called, her voice tense. "Ryan, someone broke into my office. All the footage, the files, they're gone." I felt my heart sink. "What do you mean gone?" "Completely wiped, cameras disabled. Someone knew exactly what they were looking for." That same night I saw Daniel standing on his porch, staring straight at my house. And for the first time, he didn't bother pretending anymore. He just smiled. A slow, cruel smile that told me he knew everything. The next morning, I found a new note taped to my windshield. "Last warning, stay silent or you disappear next." By then, fear had turned into anger. I wasn't going to be another one of his victims. I called Laura, told her I wanted to go public immediately. She said she'd arrange it with the investigator, but we had to wait until they could confirm a warrant. That night was the longest of my life. I barely slept, waiting for dawn, waiting for the call. Around 5 a.m., just as the first light hit the street, I heard the faint roar of engines. Not one, several. I went to the window and froze. Black vans, unmarked cars. They surrounded Daniel's house quietly without sirens. Agents in dark vests moved in formation. Then the crash of a door. Shouts. Flashing lights. I watched in disbelief as they pulled Daniel out in handcuffs. His head hung low, but even from a distance, I could see the fury in his eyes. He looked straight at my window and smiled again. But this time his smile didn't scare me. It terrified me. Because in that expression, I knew he wasn't done yet. He wasn't beaten. And somehow deep down, I felt he still had one last move left. As the agents led him away and the sun rose over the street, I thought it was over. But I was wrong. Because what they found inside his house that morning, in a locked room behind the garage, was something no one could explain. And it would make me realize that Daniel hadn't just stolen my car. He'd stolen something far more personal. Something that connected us in a way I never imagined. When the agents finally opened that locked room, no one spoke for nearly a minute. I wasn't allowed inside at first, but I could see through the open doorway. The walls were covered with photographs. Hundreds of them. At first I thought they were random, license plates, streets, blurry cars. But then I noticed something else. Half the photos were of me. Walking to work. Watering my garden. Even sitting inside my living room through the window. My stomach turned. It felt like my lungs stopped working. He'd been watching me for months, maybe years. Every movement, every routine, every moment of my life quietly documented behind that door. One of the agents stepped out, shaking his head. "This isn't just about cars," he muttered. "This guy been tracking people." Officer Jenkins wasn't there anymore. He'd been detained earlier that morning in connection with Daniel's operation. I was told later that he tried to flee when the feds arrived. But Daniel stood there calmly in cuffs, watching as they carried out the evidence. When they passed him by, he whispered something I'll never forget. "Now you finally see the whole picture." I didn't understand what he meant until they found the final box. Inside it were small tracking devices, old phones, SIM cards, and one worn-out journal with my name written on the cover. I didn't want to open it. But an agent handed it to me gently. "It's your right," he said. "You should see this." The pages were filled with messy handwriting, Daniel's handwriting. He'd written about me. Day after day, nodding when I left the house, when my wife went shopping, even what time we turned the lights off at night. But between the entries there were other names. Neighbors, coworkers. And next to some of those names, red marks. One of those red marks had a date next to it. 3 days before a man in our neighborhood went missing last year. A man everyone thought had moved away suddenly. That's when I realized Daniel wasn't just stealing cars. He was studying people. And some of them had vanished. The agents took everything for evidence, but they asked me to stay under protection until they processed it all. They put me and my wife in a hotel on the edge of town. It was quiet there, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those photos, my face staring back from a stranger's wall. 2 days later, Laura called. They found something else, she said quietly. You need to hear this. I drove to meet her in a small cafe outside town. Her face was pale, serious. They went through his phone. There were audio files, recordings, dozens of them. One of them is of you. I felt the blood drain from my face. What kind of recordings? She hesitated. It's a phone conversation. He recorded your call the night you reported your car stolen. He must have tapped your line. She pressed play on her laptop and my voice filled the room. I sounded panicked, desperate, explaining to the police that my car was gone. But then another voice came through. Daniel's voice. Right after I hung up, he called someone else. The same night. I did it, he said quietly. He'll call it in soon. Once he reports it, we're clear. Laura paused the audio. He planned it. He wanted you to report it stolen so the police would never suspect you were working with him. I leaned back, feeling like the world was tilting. So I was part of his cover story. She nodded slowly, without even knowing it. That night, I sat alone in the hotel room while my wife slept. The rain was falling again, soft, steady, like the first night this nightmare began. I couldn't shake his words from my mind. You finally see the whole picture. I kept wondering, why me? Out of everyone, why pick me? Was it random? Or was there something else between us that I didn't know? 2 days later, I got my answer. The lead agent called me to the station. He handed me a file with an old photograph inside, taken over 20 years ago. In it was a younger Daniel, standing beside another man. My father. I couldn't breathe. My father had died when I was 10, in what I'd always been told was a car accident. But now, staring at the photo, I realized he'd known Daniel. I looked at the agent in disbelief. What is this? How do they know each other? He sighed. That's what we're trying to find out. But based on records, your father used to work in a vehicle import company, the same company Daniel was involved in before he went underground. My hands started shaking. Are you saying my dad was part of this? Maybe not willingly, the agent said carefully, but we think Daniel blames your family for what happened to him back then. He lost everything after that company went down in a fraud case. Your father testified against one of the managers. I felt dizzy. So this wasn't random. He'd moved next door to me on purpose. All this time, it wasn't about money or cars. It was revenge. I remembered his words, his strange obsession, the way he said, "You don't know what real survival looks like." It all made sense now. He'd spent years planning this, watching me, waiting for the right moment to destroy me the same way he believed my father destroyed him. But even after everything, part of me still wanted to understand why. So against the agent's advice, I asked to see him. When I entered the interrogation room, Daniel was sitting calmly, hands cuffed to the table. He looked up and smiled faintly. Ryan, I wondered when you'd come. I sat down across from him. Why me? Why do all this? He chuckled softly. Because you inherited everything I lost. Your father walked away clean. I lost my career, my name, my life. I built something from the ashes, and then you showed up next door driving the same brand of car your father used to own. It was poetic, really. I clenched my fists. You could have moved on. He leaned forward slightly. You think people like me get to move on? No, Ryan, I wanted you to feel what I felt, to watch everything you built crumble, to wonder who you could trust, to lose sleep, to doubt your own safety. I wanted you to live in fear. He smiled again, and I succeeded. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said quietly, you're going to spend the rest of your life behind bars. His eyes darkened. Maybe, he said, but fear doesn't stay locked away. You'll still hear the rain at night and wonder if someone's watching. That's the part you'll never escape. I stood and left without another word. As the door closed behind me, his quiet laughter followed. Months passed. The case spread across the news, the corrupt officer, the car smuggling ring, the revenge plot. Laura's story went viral. Daniel was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Officer Jenkins got 10. People called me brave, said justice was finally served. But sometimes, late at night when the rain starts to fall, I still glance at the window, half expecting to see someone watching from the shadows. I tell myself it's over. That he's gone. But then last week I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. Me standing in front of my new house. Taken just days earlier. No words, no signature. Just one line written on the back. You can't lock away a shadow. My hands trembled as I held it. And for the first time in months, I realized Daniel's smile was right. This wasn't over. The day the truth finally came out didn't feel like a victory, it felt like the end of something I could never rebuild. Detectives had spent weeks gathering evidence. The garage, the fingerprints, the hidden keys, everything pointed to one man. And yet every time I saw Mr. Harris through that one-way glass sitting calmly with his folded hands, it didn't feel real. This was the man who'd helped me shovel my driveway, who'd offered me coffee when my pipes froze, who'd smiled at my mother when she visited. And now he was sitting there, accused of stealing my car and framing me for a crime I didn't commit. When Detective Moore walked in with a folder, he didn't say a word for a few seconds. Then he placed a photo on the table. It was blurry but clear enough to make my stomach twist. There was Mr. Harris in his garage, the hood of my car open, a set of tools on the floor, and a smirk that didn't look like the man I knew. He'd been caught by his own security camera. That was the twist no one saw coming. The police had pulled his camera footage for verification, expecting maybe to find proof of innocence. But instead, they found him sneaking into his own garage at night, working on my car, covering it with a tarp, and even driving it out once with fake plates. When confronted with it, he just looked at the detectives and said softly, "You shouldn't have trusted me." That line, it stuck in my head like a curse. The officers told me later that Mr. Harris had a long history I never knew about. He'd lost his previous home after a dispute with a neighbor, something about a stolen lawnmower, but when police investigated, the entire story collapsed. He had manipulated people before, quietly, always finding ways to make others look like the villains. They called it psychological control. He needed to feel smarter than everyone around him. And this time I'd become his perfect target, a young guy living alone, new to the neighborhood and too trusting. I thought it was over when they arrested him, but the real nightmare was only beginning. Because even after the confession, after the news spread, some people in the neighborhood still didn't believe me. They thought I must have done something to provoke him or that I had set him up. The same people who once waved at me from their porches now looked away. I became the silent stranger, the guy from that car story. My garage felt emptier than ever. Even when I finally got my car back, I couldn't bring myself to drive it. Every time I looked at it, I saw his hands under the hood, twisting bolts, smirking at his own plan. And then 3 months later, a letter arrived. It didn't have a return address, just my name written in a sharp, deliberate handwriting. Inside was a single photograph, a picture of me taken from behind my house through the trees. On the back there was a message, "You shouldn't have trusted anyone." I took it straight to the police, but they said it was impossible to trace. The ink, the paper, all common. The photo could have been printed anywhere. The address on the envelope was written by someone wearing gloves. Detective Moore looked me in the eye and said, "He's in prison, he couldn't have sent this." But I wasn't so sure. Because a week later I saw him again. At least I thought I did. It was raining and I was driving back from work when I passed a bus stop on the edge of town. For just a second I saw a man standing there, same coat, same build, same posture. He lifted his head slightly, and though I couldn't see his face clearly, I felt that same chill run through me. I pulled over, heart pounding, but when I looked again, the bus stop was empty. That night I barely slept. My phone buzzed at 2 a.m. and when I picked it up there was no one on the line, just static. Then a faint voice whispered, "Check your garage." I froze. It took me several minutes to work up the courage, but I grabbed a flashlight and went outside. The air was thick with fog, the kind that eats up sound. My footsteps echoed as I opened the door, and there it was again, my car just sitting there. Except this time the driver's door was open. And on the seat lay another photograph, this one of me sleeping, taken from my bedroom window. The police searched again, found nothing. The cameras around my house had been tampered with, wiped clean, like someone had known exactly what they were doing. When I asked if Harris had escaped, they assured me he hadn't. He was still in custody, awaiting sentencing. So who was behind this? A copycat, a friend of his, or someone else entirely, continuing what he started? Days turned into weeks and the fear became routine. Every creak in the night, every passing car, every flicker of a light made me wonder if I was being watched. I tried to move away, sell the house, even list it quietly. but no one wanted to buy a property tied to a criminal investigation. Then one evening, my phone buzzed again, an unknown number, one I didn't recognize. The message was simple: come outside. I looked out the window and there it was, my car headlights flashing twice like a signal. I hadn't touched the keys. I called the police immediately, but when they arrived, the car was gone again, vanished without a trace. They found the tire tracks leading out of the driveway down the road and then nothing, like it had evaporated into the night. 2 days later, the car turned up abandoned at the same gas station where it had first been found months ago. But this time, there was something in the trunk. A folder. Inside were dozens of printed photos, all of me, at work, at the grocery store, walking my dog, standing in my living room. Each one had a time and date written on the back. Whoever had been following me had been doing it for months. And the last photo, it wasn't of me. It was of Mr. Harris, sitting in what looked like a hospital room wearing a wristband. The date on the photo was from last week. That made no sense. He was supposed to be in prison. I took it straight to Detective Moore. He made some calls, then his face went pale. "He's gone," he said quietly. "Transferred out for psychiatric evaluation 2 weeks ago, but the hospital reports he never arrived." The air in the room felt like it collapsed. That night I changed the locks, boarded the windows, and slept with the lights on, but deep down I knew it wouldn't matter, because whoever Harris really was, he was still out there, watching, waiting. And as much as I wanted to believe the nightmare was over, the truth was, it had only just begun. 3 nights later, I woke up to the sound of my car starting again. This time it wasn't a dream. The headlights glowed through the curtains, the engine roared to life, and when I looked outside, there was someone in the driver's seat. But it was Harris. It was a woman. She looked right at me through the glass, smiled faintly, and drove away into the night. When the police checked the footage this time, they finally got a clear image of her face. She was the woman from the hospital registry, the nurse who had signed Harris out. And on her uniform badge, one name stood out: N. Harris. His sister. The one no one ever told me about. The investigation reopened, but the 2 of them were gone, no trace, no forwarding address, no sightings. Only one last message left in my mailbox a week later. It was a photograph again, this time of me standing in front of my window, taken from outside. On the back, just 4 words: "We were neighbors once." I still live in the same house. I still hear the sound of engines at night. And sometimes when I walk past the garage, I swear I can smell gasoline and hear faint laughter, like the echo of a friendship that was never real and a betrayal that never ended. Because some neighbors don't just live next door. They live inside your fears.